You know, you walk past old buildings, see names on plaques, and you don't always think about the stories hidden there.
Exactly. Like with Chinese benevolent associations. So many layers.
Right. And that actually brings us to today's deep dive. It was your curiosity, listener, about these groups that got us looking into one in particular, the Bing Kong Tong.
hmm And we've mainly been looking at a Wikipedia entry for this one. Gives a pretty good overview.
Yeah, a starting point. So the plan is to unpack the Bing Kong Tong story, origins, impact, how things changed.
Sounds good. So where to begin? The name itself.
Let's do that. Bing Kong Tong. Style in Cantonese. What's that tell us?
Well, the direct translation is Hall with Justice.
Hall with justice. Okay,
And that
right.
name, it really points to the origins. The fact that so many early Chinese immigrants, especially in the 19th century, were Cantonese speakers.
Right. So the language itself is a clue. You see that in a lot of early Chinatown names, I guess.
Definitely. It anchors it in that specific community context.
But Hall with justice, it sounds, well, straightforward. The history seems a bit more complicated, though.
Oh, absolutely. By the early 20th century, the Bing Kong Tong wasn't just any association in San Francisco's Chinatown.
They were powerful, like really powerful, right? One of the top tongs.
Exactly. And not just in SF. They were known as the Bing Kong Tong Society, or sometimes the Bing Kong Association up in Seattle.
Yeah.
Their influence spread.
Okay, so a major force on the West Coast. And that kind of power often leads to friction, doesn't it?
It certainly did here. Which brings us to, well, the Tong Wars.
Yeah, the sources mention this alliance, the Hop Sing Tong and the Sui Sing Tong. They teamed up against the Bing Kong Tong.
That's right. And that alliance, it really kicked off a period of intense conflict. The sources call it one of the most violent Tong Wars in the United States.
Wow, that's a strong statement. It wasn't just minor skirmishes then.
Not at all. Think about struggles for control, for resources, maybe operating outside the mainstream legal system or not trusting it fully. It got ugly.
And this violence, it didn't go unnoticed, right? The press picked up on it.
Big time. You had numerous murders, some described as gruesome slayings. That kind of stuff makes headlines.
Yeah, I bet. And media attention often leads to investigation.
Precisely. The authorities started looking closer. And interestingly, it wasn't just local police.
Oh.
A Santa Rosa attorney, Wallace L. Ware, spearheaded an investigation working with the DA's office.
And what did they find? Did it confirm the Bing Kong Tong's power?
It did more than confirm it. It showed just how widespread their influence really was.
So beyond San Francisco.
Way beyond. All up and down the West Coast, even into the Southwest. They actually convicted members for a murder way out in Kingman, Arizona.
Arizona, okay, that really shows the reach. It wasn't just a Chinatown thing.
Not by that point, no. It was a network.
So you have this arc, community association, powerful tongue, violent wars, major investigation. What happens next? Does the story end there?
Not quite. All that conflict, like a decade of it, plus the pressure from the state, it weakened them.
Makes sense. Constant fighting, legal battles. It takes a toll.
Right. And so the Bing Kong Tong eventually sort of shifted. It emerged as a trade union.
A trade union. From a Tong involved in violent wars, that's quite a transformation.
It is, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It raises questions about how organizations adapt, maybe redefine themselves when the pressure's on. Survival, perhaps?
But even with that change, there's still a footnote, isn't there? A lingering question mark.
There is. The sources mentioned that, well, even now, federal and local law enforcement suspect there might still be ties to organized crime.
So the past isn't entirely buried.
It seems not. History has long shadows sometimes.
For anyone listening who wants to dig deeper, what kind of sources are out there?
Well, the Wikipedia entry we looked at points to a few things. Books on, like California Farm Workers, encyclopedias covering organized crime.
Okay.
There's even the Bing Kong Tong's own website, though it's in traditional Chinese, and an archive piece about Chinese associations in Fresno and Simplified Chinese. So materials are out there if you want to explore.
So, summing up then, Bing Kong Tong starts as a hall with justice, becomes a powerhouse tongue, gets caught up in brutal wars, faces major investigations exposing its reach, and then transforms into a trade union. But maybe with some old questions still hanging around.
That's a pretty good summary. It really shows the complex path these organizations could take, especially navigating life as an immigrant community in a new country, dealing with internal power struggles and external pressures.
Yeah, it definitely leaves you thinking, and maybe this is the final thought for you, our listener. When you look at the Bing Kong Tong's journey, what does it suggest about that interplay between immigrant communities, crime, assimilation, just adapting, really, in American history.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other groups, maybe ones that seem pretty ordinary today, might have similarly complex, maybe even hidden histories?